Hi there, Kimberly Flanagan of Kimberly's Quilts. We're back for part 3 of my crazy quilt journey. This is part of my Island Batik Ambassador Challenge for, what will it be, September of 2025. Crazy quilts were something that was new to me. If you watched video 1 and 2, you'll know that this is really, I was trying to figure out a way that I could do this and actually kind of not have to do the stitch and flip method, which I personally think wastes a lot of fabric, and I love my fabric, so I try and conserve it as much as possible. Island Batik has generously donated this fabric line. These are the fabrics that I have chosen to use. Some of them have already been cut, but here's the remaining fat quarters. This line is Frosted Foliage Spring 2025 Needle and a Haystack. I have to tell you, these are stunning in person. Whatever's coming through on video doesn't do it justice. These are the half yard cuts that I've yet to use yet. Doesn't mean I won't be using them. And here is the ones that I've already cut. They've also generously provided 2-yard cuts for background, border, sashing, whatever else. This is going to be my centers, as you'll see. And today we're all about cutting. We're talking about whether we want to use your scan and cut, your Cricut, your Silhouette, regardless of which machine you would like to use. How do you go about cutting this blocks? We've already laid them out. We've already gone into Canvas Workspace and set everything up to send to our cutting machine. So now let's get to cutting. First thing we're going to talk about when it comes to fabric prep and cutting is what type of fusible web do I want to use? Guys, there's a lot out there. And any of you guys that have taken my classes know that I am not a proponent of the quilt police. You do what works for you. I have 2 that I use a lot. However, I've just been introduced to a 3rd that I ordered and I'm going to be trying because several people in the industry who I respect their opinions greatly have recommended it. And that's a product called Hot Fix. Don't know yet whether I'm going to love it as much as they do, but I'll get back to you and let you know. But I have Steam Seam 2 and I have Heat and Bond Light. When we're talking about fabric prep, the most important thing to think about is what's the final use. I like the light products because I don't want something that's going to be heavy and stiff and everything. This is going to be a quilt. So when I'm finished, I want this to actually show up nicely in my quilt and not make my quilt real stiff. So I choose the Steam Seam 2 or Heat and Bond Light. Those are my go-tos. I've already cut 2 of my pieces of fabric, and I've already cut 2 of my fusible web pieces. These are double-sided fusible web, because similar to what you would use in like an applique type of environment. The other thing that I want to talk about before we get to actually cutting is our mats. I'm using the Brothers Scan and Cut. Again, I've used the Cricut, I've used the Silhouette. They all work fine. But for the Brothers Scan and Cut, you have a low-tack mat and you have a fabric mat. The low-tack mat came with my machine when I got it. This works wonderfully. As you can see, my fabric mat isn't even out of the packaging yet. It's a gold mat, color-coded here at the bottom. If you have a fabric mat and you use it and you like it, great. I'm just saying, I'd rather spend my money on fabric and other things. I'm now in hindsight, don't know that I needed this or needed to spend the money on it. My low-tack mat I've been using for several years now, and it's doing the job just fine, as you will see. So how do I get my fabric ready for the cutting machine? First thing I need to do is I need to take my fusible web, which is your Steam Seam 2 or your Heat and Bond or your Hot Fix, and I need to adhere it to each of these pieces of fabric. I'm going to do that by, I use something called a goddess sheet. I bought this 10 years ago or more at a quilt show, and it prevents my iron and my wool cutting mat from getting any of the fusible web on it in case my fabric slightly hangs over. It is, I don't know what it truly is, but it's kind of like a Teflon sheet. As you can see, it's got a little fold in it that's from years of good use. What I'm going to do is take my fabric and I'm going to lay it down. Now, I'm using a Batik, so I want to make sure that I have my right side down and I'm putting the fusible web on the back of my fabric. On your fusible web, I have a double-sided piece of fusible here. Sometimes it's single-sided fusible that people use in garments and things where it's not going to come out. They want it to stay in there for stiffness, so it might be single-sided. Make sure that you have double-sided. I'm going to take one layer of the paper off of it, and I'm going to leave the other attached. I then line this up, and I like to come down to close to the edge because I like to conserve. I don't, I have a piece of fabric down here that I'm going to be able to continue to use. And I lay it down, and I usually use my hands to straighten it out a little bit. Then I put this over top, and it would have prevented, if any of this fusible overhang on any area, me getting that on my iron or my mat. Follow the instructions. The Steam Seam says 30 seconds that I'm going to press this down. And I don't know what Hotfix's instructions are. I have not seen those yet. I've ordered it, but it hasn't come in yet. But follow your instructions. Basically what you're doing now is you're adhering this one side to your fabric. And I'm making sure that I have a nice solid connection. It's kind of melting that one side of the fusible and adhering it to the fabric. You don't want it coming up. You don't want it getting stuck in your machine. So just make sure I slowly move my iron around. But I'm just moving my iron slowly over, making sure that I get all of the areas and I get this adhered to it. This month's challenge is sponsored by Aurifil. You will see all kinds of great threads that they generously provided that I used during this process. Now, it's very hot right now. I'm going to put this aside until I get to the next piece. And I'm just going to let this cool a little bit. While I'm letting this cool, let me talk about my mat. I am using, there's a protective plastic sheathing on this. It comes off. Keep this. I put this on my mat every time I'm finished just because it's a great protector of the stickiness, keeping the dust off. You don't want all of that dust buildup or anything. But if you ever need to clean your mats, quick and easy way to do it is with a diaper wipe. Alcohol-free, fragrance-free. I usually buy them at like Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart. But I make sure that they're alcohol-free. I don't want to strip my mat, and I make sure that they're fragrance-free because I just don't want any of those stuffs in there. All I have to do to clean my mat is take the diaper wipe and rub over top of it gently. And you will be surprised at the grime that comes off of your mat that you're not even aware that's on there. So we are going to clean our mat real good. I usually do this when I start a project, not when I finish a project, because if I hang this on my wall over there and I leave it for a couple weeks or a couple months sometimes, it's getting dust and dog hair and whatever else just from being in my room. So I prefer to make sure that it's clean when I start. If you get to the point that your mat is losing its stickiness, they make a product that they call Zig. It is a two-way glue. All you have to do is very lightly cover this with the glue, let it dry. It goes on blue, but it dries clear, so that way you'll know it's dry and ready to use. I've only had to re-glue my mat once, and I've had this mat for like 3 years. So not something you'll use often, but just know that just if your mat loses its sticky, it's not over and done with. You can salvage it, get you some zig. I think it's on Amazon. If it is, I'll link to my description below. Now, I'm getting ready to adhere it. On your mat, notice that the top of this has a blue arrow. That's the direction that it loads into my machine. So this is the top of my mat. I'm going to put this on so that it's facing you, but when I'm not videotaping, I have it turned the other way around. I have another piece of almost like wax paper on top of this. I pull off. Now I have a sticky adhesive on my fabric. I am going to line this up, and I like to line it up with one of my sides, sometimes the right side, sometimes the left side, but it allows me to make sure that I have everything nice and straight. Put my fabric on here, and then I use my hand and I go down through the side here, making sure that they are adhering to each other. I don't want any bubbles like I have here. I'm going to pull it back slightly. And I make sure, using my hands, that it's nice and adhere. I don't feel any bubbles. It also comes with a little scraper, and I don't have that handy, but I will sometimes if I don't feel like it's adhering well. I like my hands. I think my hands are the best tool. But if I don't feel like it's adhering well, I will use that scraper and make sure that it's adhering better. Now I have my fabric adhered to the mat, and I'm ready to go over to the machine and do some cutting. So I'm going to pause you here. I'm going to take you over to the machine, and we'll pick up from there. Okay, so here we are over at my scan and cut. Anything that I'm about to do, it doesn't matter which model scan and cut you have. So I happen to have the 330 SDX 330D. I have transferred wirelessly from my Canvas workspace over here. So I'm going to say retrieve data. And then I'm going to hit this cloud. That means that this is the one for the wireless transfer. These are stored within the memory of your machine. This indicates you're going to use a USB stick, in which case you would use the port on the side, or if you have your laptop hooked up by a cable there on the side. So the first thing I'm going to hit this cloud, and it's going to tell me it's retrieving my data. Now I'm going to say it's brought up, if you can see in here, the layout of the outside pieces of my block. Real quick, in case you guys don't know what we're making, this is what one of the finished blocks already looks like. So I've already stitched out a couple of these. I always test things to make sure they're going to work before I start doing using my good fabric and doing things for real. I had 3 test cases, and this is my first real block. So that's what one of the 12 blocks is going to look like. So now we are going to say, okay. Okay. And then on here, it will say, please select. I have to touch that to say whether I want to cut, draw, emboss, foil, foil 2, and there's some other options. But we're cutting fabric, so we're going to use cut. And it's processing. Now it says that I can either do a test cut or I can put start. So I have my mat loaded right here. And like I said, we want the blue arrow going straight into the machine. So there's 2 little tracks, or I would say guides, here on the side. You can use a 12 by 12 or a 12 by 24 mat. What I'm cutting out isn't even 12 inches long, so the 12 by 12 is more than adequate. So I'm going to put this right here, and then I have to hit this button right here. This button is the load mat. And you will see that it goes in a little bit, comes back out. It's making sure that everything's right. And if by chance I had this set up in Canvas Workspace to cut out 24 inches, I would have possibly gotten an error right here telling me that this was the wrong mat, and I could have adjusted then. Lots of built-in little things that kind of, like I built for me, it's idiot proof. It's going to stop me before I can mess up. So now all I do is I come in here and I hit start. And it will tell me up here that I have 1 minute left to cut. This is very helpful if you have a large mat and you have a lot of cutting to do, lots of pieces. It will actually tell you the time that it's going to take to cut. And you'll see the little slide bar counting down from blue to black. You'll notice that I'm using the gold blade, that the colors of the blades usually coordinate with the mat. I have the fabric mat blade in there. It's fine. It doesn't matter that I'm using a low-tack mat, but I'm cutting fabric. So I'd like to coordinate my blade to the what I'm cutting. Okay, now it will tell me here that it's finished cutting. I hit OK, and then I have to come and eject my mat. Please don't just rip your mat out. That's not really good for it. Now, at this point, all we have to do is pull up on a corner and start removing our fabric. And what you will see starting to appear, and there's always these pesky little corners of the fabric that it doesn't seem to cut. So just a pair of scissors nearby, and when you snip that corner, it will keep right on going. Now, I have a decent sized piece of fabric here at the bottom. I will cut these off and save these because I do a lot of applique work. So by just cutting this piece off here, I have a nice, decent sized piece of fabric for another project. And this little bit, I just dispose of. Now I have one of each of the 4 pieces. So I have these components that I can mix and match in my crazy quilt when we get to the stitching.